every third day, I'm getting 5 texts from our cast and crew going, oh my God, this scene from the movie just happened. This scene from the movie just happened. And so I had a moment where I was like, do we need to make this movie? Has it just happened? And it was very strange because Netflix, about 5 months into the quarantine, let us know that they think they have a way to do it safe. And I was still wondering, like, did our movie just come true?
Adam, I was delighted to be able to go and see Don't Look Up on the big screen recently. It really is a big screen experience. I'm a huge admirer of all your work, but I think this is something particularly extraordinary. How did it come about?
You know, I think it came to me from the place that a lot of good ideas come from, which is stark terror. It was about 3, maybe 4 years ago, and this has been building for 10 or 12 years, where the climate crisis just keeps everything I learn about it just seems worse and worse. And that UN report from the IPCC came out, and I couldn't sleep for 3 nights after I read it. And I just like, I have to do something about this. And luckily, a friend of mine made a joke about it's like climate change is like a comet's going to hit Earth and no one cares. And I said, that's the idea. That's David Sirota, who shares a story by credit with me. And I like the fact that we got to laugh, you know, because I think it's very easy with some of this stuff to just go down a doom hole. But I thought it was really important that we laughed, that we're able to look at ourselves. And little did I know at the time that I wrote it, you know, once every 200 years pandemic was headed towards us. So it's been a very strange experience. Let me ask you, how did you come upon Cyrano? Because I believe it was a stage production first. Is that the case?
I had always loved the story of Cyrano, being a kind of dweeby, unlovable teenager who, you know, thought himself completely unworthy of affection. When I saw the Gérard Depardieu version, I was like, oh, that's me. But there was no real reason to make another version of it until I saw a tiny little workshop at the Chester Theatre in Connecticut. It was like 120-seater, and Peter Dinklage was playing Cyrano and Hayley Bennett was playing Roxanne. And seeing them play those roles suddenly opened up the possibility for me of doing a musical version with them in those central roles, because it felt totally fresh and modern and intimate. And it had a kind of level of intimate authenticity that really excited me. First, I asked Hayley if I could approach Pete and Erica Schmidt, who wrote the stage version, and she agreed. So I approached them and they agreed. And so we started developing the film over 2 or 3 years, and then we were in a pandemic, and suddenly it felt now is the right time to make a film about human connection and the difficulty in connecting with other people and the difficulty of allowing yourself to be seen. So that was the genesis of it.
My sole purpose on this earth is to love Roxanne.
Does she know?
The world will never accept someone like me and a tall, beautiful woman.
Someone told me this was a 3-year process, because we did Don't Look Up. It was pretty crazy. It was over 2 years, obviously, with having to stop production, or we were scouting when we shut down for the pandemic. And so probably all told, with the writing of the script, it was 2.5 years. But I heard you guys, is that true that you guys were 3 years?
No, we were developing the script for 3 years, and then it was June 28th, 2020. So we'd been in lockdown for about 4 months in the UK when I felt like I got the script to the right place, and I just had to go out and make a movie. I was going out of my mind. So I called Eric Fellner, and he said, you've got 5% chance of getting this made. So I said, great, that's enough for me. And we managed to raise the money from MGM, and we went and shot in the middle of the pandemic, which felt like we were on a mission, like a mission of love and human connection. You know, the UK government was very, very slow in getting money together for the arts, for freelance crafts and arts people. And so it was a way of getting food on the table for them, and also a way of us all connecting together and then connecting for an audience. And so you shot during the pandemic?
We did the same thing. Yeah, we shut down in the middle of scouting in March when it all hit. And then I went home for, like all of us did, for 5 months. And in our case, it was really strange because, you've seen the movie, the premise. A lot of it is a lot like COVID. And so every third day, I'm getting 5 texts from our cast and crew going, oh my God, this scene from the movie just happened. This scene from the movie just happened. And so I had a moment where I was like, do we need to make this movie? Has it just happened? And it was very strange because Netflix, about 5 months into the quarantine, let us know that they think they have a way to do it safe. And I was still wondering, like, did our movie just come true? And I picked it up and I read it, and I realized it read in a completely different way, that the movie was never about COVID or climate change, although to some degree it's still about climate change, but that it was really all about how we've broken the means, we prophetized and distorted the means with which we talk to each other and communicate. So it was really always about social media, careerism, and greed, and that it was always about that. And it was a great experience because we were more excited to then charge into it. And we had a similar experience that you did, which is, the testing, the masks, the zones, all that kind of stuff. And everyone had the same attitude that you were just talking about, which is we were so grateful that we were able to make the movie and to able to process feelings and do what we do. So even though we had to go home to, our solo empty apartments at night, the fact that we were able to play with each other and do these scenes and, improvise and laugh was just, we felt spoiled, even though it was really, really bizarre. I'm curious with you though, and how did you deal with this? Because I know how we dealt with it, but you have scenes in this movie. One of the opening scenes at the theater is really packed.
Well, the theater scene, we had a limited number of extras we were allowed to use. It was only like 160 people. It was our maximum number. And so we designed the set so that it looked full. So we basically reduced the size of the set to make it feel packed. We built the set outdoors. We had a location which was an interior theater, but then we kind of changed that so that we could kind of refer to theater of the early 18th century, which was often outdoors, so that you got the kind of aeration. And also my mum, who's a puppet maker and prop maker, made 160 leather masks in the kind of commedia dell'arte style. So a lot of the extras in the background are actually wearing masks, but they're just kind of on-camera masks. And we did a little intro, so they were wearing the kind of Cyrano nose. So and then we tested everybody every day, and because the town had pretty much closed down by that point, all of the extras were going home, isolating, coming to work. And it was a bigger number, but it was the same idea. One of the things I really love about what you do and also kind of political satire is that it does help me process my feelings through laughter, which I find to be a really healthy way of, I think that's probably the point of laughter, is that it allows us to look at really scary, dark things and not hide from them, but see them in a way that I can actually take. If I see a film about the climate crisis that's a drama, I'm in bits on the floor. But with your movie, I'm able to laugh at it, and though that doesn't mean I kind of can forget it. I take it all in, but the way I've digested it through laughter means that it's possible to do that. The same applied to Dr. Strangelove. I was always terrified of the nuclear bomb, and when I saw that film, it allowed me to process those feelings. But what I love also is that it works. It works in the macro, but also in the micro. One of my favorite things in the whole movie is Jennifer Lawrence's obsession with this character who charged for the snacks, which seemed to satirize both the greed of the guy who's charging for the snacks, but also satirizes our own kind of OCD obsession with the finer details. And I think that often political satire works on the big level, but not necessarily the details, whereas the details are so kind of perfect. I know you come from an improvisational background. How much of the script is improvised? How much freedom is there for the actors in that sense?
I give the actors total freedom. I jokingly call myself the anti-David Mamet. I sort of hope and pray they'll mess around with what I've written. I mean, I also, when we're filming, I always say, like, we get the scripted. I always say we've fulfilled our legal obligation. We've gotten the scripted, and we want the scripted to be good. And usually what it ends up being, depending on the movie, I mean, the early stuff I did with Will Ferrell, I think the amount of improv in those movies could get as high as 25%. I would say with a movie like this, it's 10, 15%. And what I love about it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you come from a theater family or a theater background as well. So you know this. When the playfulness is introduced, even the acting with the scripted gets better.
Yeah.
The actors feel freer because even when you're doing a scripted material, there's always improv even involved in that. So I love creating that environment, and I let the actors know that the whole way the improv works is some of it's not going to be good, and we want the stuff that's not great. Like, the stuff that's not great gets us to the good stuff. And so we really try and create an environment where it's playful. The judgment is relatively low. You can mess up, you can swing and miss. And I think you're right. I think with this movie, the laughter is a big part of it. But at the same time, and your movie has this too, where you can feel a lot of different things at the same time. And I think because of how commodified our society has become, people tend to think that it's either sad or happy or you're laughing. And, in your movie, I was feeling the emotion of the music. I was laughing. I was having a good time. I was feeling really stricken at certain points. And I think it's okay for all of those emotions to exist on the same lazy Susan, if you will. And so with our movie, we really tried to do that. We wanted people to laugh hard, because I agree with you. I think laughter right away means you have perspective. You're not overwhelmed. I think in order to laugh, you have to have some distance. So we were really kind of playing around with that collage of feelings we're all feeling in this insane funhouse mirror reality that we're living in.
At this exact moment, I say we sit tight and assess.
Sit tight and assess?
Sit tight.
And then assess.
I got to ask you the big question, the $1 million question is, when did you know, or was it in the original theatrical production, that there would be no no's? You would never, because that's, for most people, when they think of Cyrano, I'm assuming it was in the theatrical production, there was no no's.
It was, yeah. In the theatrical production, there was no no's. And in a way, the idea was that the no's would distract from the reality that we can all share, which is that we all feel at certain points, if not continuously, unworthy of love. So it's an inside job. It's not his nose, it's not Pete's height. The point is that he feels emotionally that he will never be able to be loved by the person that he loves. And hopefully that makes it more immediate and more relatable. Because the idea for me is always to kind of make films that help me unpack my own feelings about stuff. And I do that through period movies, which are kind of fantasies rather than period. Because of my parents running a puppet theatre, I was brought up on fairy tales, and I see them as being a way of reflecting back on us, our own psychology without the details and ephemera of perceived kind of contemporary reality. So they're all kind of fantasies. I think that period movies are often considered to be kind of conservative or reactionary. And what I've tried to do throughout my career is to kind of subvert that, really, and to try and subvert the genre as a whole.
I love the point you just made about how you like period movies because they're close to fairy tales and they free us from the, constrictions of reality. I think that's really interesting. And you know what I love about it too, and I saw this in your movie, is that because the culture and the mores of the times are always a little different. It's funny. I mean, you can go back 2,000 years ago and it's not as different. I mean, when they were building the pyramids, they were drinking beer and they were laughing, and you can find
they had social hierarchy.
100%. It's a lot less different than you think.
Yeah.
But there's always a couple things that are different. And I love seeing that in your opening scene where one of the members of the Duke's entourage challenges Cyrano. He challenges him because he's not wearing feathers and he's not dressed in the appropriate way. So I really enjoy, and I think the way you do a great job of it, the way you use period, because of the little differences that point out the commonalities, even though it looks and feels so different. Anyway, I that's a really interesting.
That's exactly what I'm trying to do. When I started out, I really wanted to make gritty British realist drama about the oppressed working classes, and I just wasn't very good at it. There were people who were much, much better at it than me. And then I got asked to make Pride and Prejudice. And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't want to, that's crazy. I'm tough and but when I made that movie, I found that I just loved it. I loved the whole process of it, and I felt very at home in it, and it felt very natural. And so I guess the point being is your career is what happens whilst you're busy making other plans or developing other scripts. And now I'm accepting of it. I've reached a certain age where I go, okay, this is all right. This is me. It's okay. Rather than trying to be different all the time and trying to be cool,
It's so true. I mean, you were talking about the improv. I mean, there's no question that I come from a theater improvisational background as well, and I've always loved comedy. I mean, I've always been engaged in politics, and I have a lot of different interests, and I love a lot of different kinds of movies. The same thing happened to me, where I was just like, oh, I'm going to make movies and have the greatest job in the world, where I get to laugh all day long, and then all of a sudden, someone shook the world like a snow globe, and it was like, all right. That no longer makes sense. Let's adjust a little bit here. Oh, by the way, to answer your question about the improv, one of my favorite moments in the movie, completely improvised from Jonah Hill. He does a prayer as we're about to launch the rescue mission. And it's not a prayer for people or families.
It's a prayer for stuff.
Exactly. And Jonah just dropped that on the day. And I was like, whoa. And you probably dealt with this when the improv is really good, you incorporate it into the coverage. You then go, I need a single of that. I need a medium. And I told John, I go, okay, that's in the coverage. We're getting that one.
That busts your day, but it's worth it.
Oh, it's the best. It's the best. It's so great because you get the scripted, they're amazing actors and everyone's incredible. So the scripted's beautiful. And then you have to balance that schedule so you're not up against it. But if you got that little bit of time, it's just there's no risk and you just end up with these gems.
So how certain is this?
99.78% to be exact.
Oh, great. Okay, so it's not 100%.
Call it 70% and let's move on.
The big shock for me, and did you know that Meryl Streep is an absolute killer improviser?
I did not know that.
And I'm not exaggerating. I'm not being nice Hollywood director, I'm saying this to you straight up. One of the great improvisers I have ever met or seen. Pitch perfect, real, and most of all, she can do 20 takes where every improv is different. And I kept asking her, I'm like, what? did you study improvisation? Like, and she would never give me a straight answer. She was just always like, oh, just having fun. I'm like, and then Jonah and I would talk, and Jonah's a magnificent improviser. Yeah. And even he was like, dude, I did not know this was the case. So little secret in the future, if you're blessed enough to be in that situation, she is an absolute assassin when it comes to improv. It's really amazing.
Did you have those actors in mind as you was writing it?
Yeah, a bunch of them. I originally wrote Kate DiBiase, who's the doctoral candidate, grad student. That was written for Jen Lawrence right from the jump. Teddy Oglethorpe, who's the government NASA official, was written for Rob Morgan. And then when I wrote The President, I did the delusional thing of like, maybe we could get Meryl Streep, assuming that would not happen. So that was the crazy big swing where when she said yes, I couldn't believe it. And I was sort of thinking of Cate Blanchett for Briavante and a couple other names.
I remember when I worked on Hannah with Kate, and on the first couple of days, I was a little bit intimidated. And so I employed a usual trick, which was to ask people I'm intimidated by about their childhood and about their schooling and so on. And I discovered that Kate was head girl at her school. And then it all just made sense. And I was like, oh, okay, you're head girl. And there's an element of her head girlness that comes out in this. And I love that scene in the bed when they feel like they have to do the getting to know you stuff. And the only kind of information, exposition, backstory really she offers is that she slept with two ex-presidents. You kind of go, oh, I know exactly who this person is. I don't need a monologue. I don't need 2 pages of my parents, this, that, the other, whatever. She slept with two ex-presidents. I know who you are.
That's it. You got it.
It's a brilliant piece of writing.
Oh, thanks, man. I got to ask you the $1 million question, which beyond the nose, which is the kind of first thought question, which is, so I have shot a bunch of musical scenes in my movies, and about half of them have been cut to the point where it's a joke among the people I work with that, like, McKay, you want to do a musical? I've gotten a couple of them in. There's a musical sequence in this movie. Anchorman has one, Step Brothers. I've gotten a few in through the years, but I've had a couple doozies that were like 2 days of filming, and it's like, it doesn't work. So I'm so curious, because the musical numbers in this are just fantastic, and they feel intimate, and they pull me in and they ride right on the story. What was your approach going into a musical number? Is there anything different that you do? Because everyone does musical numbers differently. Some people have to have it be live on the set. Some people shoot it in wides. Like, I'm just curious how you approach, because it's so well done.
I guess what I didn't want to do was have the kind of needle drop, talking, and then suddenly we start singing and it's a completely different movie. I wanted a sense of naturalism to the songs. I was listening to some music one day and I was singing along at home, and I thought, oh, that's what it should be like. It should be like you're just singing along to something that's playing in the background, and that feels very natural. You don't even, think about it. So to that end, we did record all the singing live, which brought an intimacy, as you say, and a kind of authenticity, but it allowed for faults. And I really like the faults in stuff. I don't want my films to be shiny, perfect, because I don't recognize myself in that. I feel at home in slightly messy environments. I want my films to be messy because life is messy. And so recording all the singing live on camera meant that there are faults, there are cracks in the voices, there are breaths taken at the wrong moment. There's one point Haley Bennett kind of wells up and almost cries, which inhibits her ability to sing, which was important to me. I wanted those kind of human fallibilities because it's a film about human fallibility, and it's about how we're all a little bit broken, and that's okay, accepting of those ideas.
I need something to die for write poems and cry for, and I won't be ashamed.
I think one of the interesting things about musical numbers is that they're a bit like fights, in the sense that you have to be very, very clear about your in points and your out points, and they have to have a very definite structure. You can't just kind of see how it goes. So trying to get a kind of very naturalistic observational feeling at the same time as having them very, very structured was an interesting challenge.
My editor, Hank Corwin, and I started talking about how there's always another character in the room, which is this media churn, white noise buzz, which, depending on which country you're in, can be very loud. In the US, obviously, it's deafening. That's social media, broadcast, all that kind of stuff. And how much more and more as the years go by, it's shaping our discussion and it's becoming part of our life. So with The Big Short, we talked about how can we make that part of the movie? And we ended up using some stock footage and we ended up going through it. So then with Vice, I said, you know what? I'm going to shoot our own stock footage. So what we would do is when we would have a location like the White House, for instance, and Don't Look Up, I would put on the schedule that we're going to literally step outside the soundstage with a cell phone camera, and I need a wall, and I need 2 extras, or I'm going to use a Super 8, or I'm going to use whatever, or security cam footage. And so our God bless our line producer, EP, Jeff Waxman, he just got used to it, that everywhere we went, we were always getting 3 extra shots that would be, quote, stock footage. So what you end up seeing in the movie is like, half the footage, maybe even 60% is fake stock footage that we made. And my editor, Hank Corwin, just pours through it, looks at everything, hundreds and hundreds of shots to get that exact right rhythm. He's really a maniac about it.
Very much a hero of your movie. Hank Corwin is incredible. It's a beautifully cut movie. It's a beautifully cut movie. And in all the scenes that were intercut, in the kind of non-linear moments when you're cutting forward in time and back in time and so on, in a kind of Nick Rogue almost sense, were they scripted like that, or was that something that just developed through post?
Once again, so this is my 3rd film with Hank Corwin, and there's really no one like him. So it's funny, I now script my scripts with flash forward, this scene where they're in the Oval Office and we're cutting to the battleship with their speech. That was actually written that way. And it was funny because Hank was like, that really works. I was like, yeah, because I wrote it because I knew that's how you'd cut it. And
that's great.
So it's really great. I mean, I have an unusual relationship with Hank Corwin and my composer, Nick Britell. The 3 of us really start talking about these movies very early on. Those 2 guys had very hard jobs on this movie. I mean, to find the music that can capture that, what Britell did just blew me away. And Corwin, too, had to with a lot of little tweaks and shaping. And that moment is a little too ridiculous. We need a little more, this could be more ridiculous. So yeah, I agree with you, Hank Corwin and our composer, Nick Britell.
I really love having music composed prior to shooting.
Oh, it's the best. I actually think, I'm curious what you think about this. I think because of the oversaturation of media, because of social media, TikTok, all this stuff, I'm kind of curious to see if there's theater is always a powerful force, but I'm curious to see if there's a renaissance of live, intimate chamber theater, because to me, it seems more powerful than ever. The idea of being
there has been in London up before the pandemic. It was happening, and it was really exciting. And I was probably going to see more theatre at the time than I was film, because of the immediacy of it. The pandemic kiboshed that, and hopefully it'll reemerge though, because it's important, and people it's much cheaper, and so people get to put on stories that are more urgent to them.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the barrier of entry. I mean, it's the reason that a lot of the internet and TikTok and all YouTube are so popular, is because back when I was in my 20s, I wanted to do comedy. I wanted to do sketch. You had to, in the States, you had to go to Chicago. That's where Second City was. That's where live theater is. So there was this crazy migration of these just amazing, like Tina Fey, Chris Farley, Tim Meadows, Mike Myers, all these people showed up in this city. And I'll be eternally thankful for that community, that I got to be a part of that. And I am curious to see if it comes back. I love hearing that you're saying there was some of that going on before the pandemic. That's very exciting. And it sounds like your movie came from a live theater event that wasn't in a 1,800 seat theater.
Not at all. Not at all. It came from a workshop. It came from an experimental workshop, and so that gave me space to fill in with my own imagination the spaces that had been left, and that was really exciting. But I always remember my dad once, someone calling to book tickets for the Puppet Theatre, saying, is there any audience participation involved in the show? Because we don't like audience participation. And my dad said, yes, madam, there is. There is the participation of the imagination. And I think that has stuck with me. And I think that's more possible in theatre. But what one's trying to do is to bring that to film as well. That's what I was trying to do with Anna Karenina. And that's, not filling in every detail of the screen with reality, but allowing space for the audience to project their own imaginations and their own feelings. And I think what you have done with the editing and the writing of Don't Look Up is that you allow space for the audience to make connections between these disparate images, and it's the space between the images which is as exciting as the images themselves, if you like. And those very hard cuts you do, there's a brilliant hard cut when Leo is making this kind of speech on TV and he's going into this complete breakdown moment. And then you cut in the middle of a sentence, if not a word. And for me, that means that the audience is required to participate. It's not a passive experience. And I've always wanted to try and get audiences to participate actively rather than just have this kind of dead, passive thing of being fed truisms or bland stuff. It's important that we get people to also realize that there are choices to make in life.
What you're describing just in the abstract that's my favorite. All the magical experiences I've had in theaters, I've had at live music, watching a movie, are the ones where you can feel it become something that's bigger than just the stage, where you feel like you're a part of it.
I want to see the Adam McKay musical. I want to see it all, Adam. I can't wait to keep watching all your stuff because you make it all feel a little bit better.
Bless you. I got to tell you, I love what you're doing with Period. I want to see you keep going at that. I'd love to see you do a movie that takes place in 320 BCE. I want to see you do one that's just, there's not even human being. I love what you're doing with finding the commonality, the universal in this experience of living. And then on another level, I just thought your movie I just had a blast watching it. I thought it was beautiful looking and loved the character. So there's that level, and then there's the bigger thing, but I feel the same way. I'm just a huge fan of your work, and what a pleasure to finally meet you. Granted,
absolutely,
through screens, but
I understand you're probably just up the road. So do you want to go for a coffee now?
Let's. If you turn around, I'm right behind you.
Oh my God.